Seeds theirs. We live by the death of others.
He finally decides that even animals, they kill for a reason. Human beings, it becomes part of their nature, just to kill.
Da Vinci leaves the service of Borgia and returns to Florence and the art of painting, perhaps to explore the gentler side of human nature. There he begins the one work for which he will always be remembered.
No, non ridete. Sorridete. È divertente ma non isterico. Pensate cose dolci. Pensate al vostro amante. Giusto.
It is called the Mona Lisa. No one knows who she is, or if she even existed at all. As he paints, Da Vinci keeps her amused with music and entertainment.
Leonardo says in his writings that faces are most beautiful at dusk. He captures this effect by using transparent films of paint, a technique which is later called sfumato, which means kind of literally smoking, kind of a smoky effect.
You can see it in these almost invisible transitions from light to shade, which are so enigmatic and so incredible that anybody could paint that with brushes. It's really a great display of virtuosity. People often talk about the Mona Lisa smile as being mysterious. If it is mysterious, it's because Leonardo da Vinci has shaded the corners of her mouth and eyes, which are some of the most expressive features of the human face.
It's to suggest that the Mona Lisa is a painting of a mystery, that there's something very, very secret going on with the Mona Lisa. And we get the elaboration of this myth of secrecy about the Mona Lisa's smile. Or who is the Mona Lisa? You know, is she Leonardo's lover? Is she Leonardo himself?
History does not reveal her true identity. Da Vinci's biographer Vasari identifies her as Mona Lisa Gioconda, the wife of a merchant. But Vasari never saw the painting, and Da Vinci himself never left any clue.
Carried it around with him for years, and he kept working on it. Never quite done. The only reason it exists in the form it exists today is because he died.
The Mona Lisa remains forever a work in progress, a physical manifestation of his code, of his commitment to achieve the impossible, perfection in painting. Never satisfied, Leonardo's restless mind continues to ponder the world around him. One of his greatest obsessions is the mystery of flight.
I mean, in a day when there is no stop-motion photography, he was able to look at birds in flight and actually see that birds don't just flap their wings up and down. It's a very complicated sort of figure-8 motion of the bird's wing tilting and coming up and turning and pushing down with every single beat.
He uses his knowledge of engineering to design machines that he hopes will be capable of flight, and he makes a bold prediction.
There shall be wings for man. If it is not accomplished by me, then it will be someday by some other.
He adapts a child's spinning toy into a design for a hovering apparatus, using a helical screw rather than a rotor as modern helicopters do. He creates bat-winged flying machines whose wings would flap like a bird with an elaborate framework, one that even includes a rudder-like flight control.
There is a legend that he tried to actually fly a machine and that the machine crashed and someone broke a leg in this attempt.
Leonardo's machines are amazing and fantastic, in the way that fantastic is fantasy. Maybe they didn't work, but they mean so much as far as the mind is concerned, as far as his actual ability to think beyond the box.
But he seems to have realized that the amount of power necessary to make one of his 6-foot-long wings flap was more than a person could provide. So then he starts getting into more complicated designs that actually involve motors of some sort that will actually store up enough energy so that you can get them to flap for a while before the motor stops.
Only late in life does he consider the idea of a single fixed wing, the idea that will eventually lead to successful flight hundreds of years later. For all his striving, for all his extraordinary designs, he never succeeds in solving the great challenge of manned flight. But for almost his entire life, he keeps trying.
He's a brilliant man, he's a brilliant engineer as far as the theory is concerned. But maybe the practice, maybe the practical part of things, the practical part of engineering, which so often eludes these great thinkers, also eluded him.
Despite Leonardo's frustrations with engineering, it is with a far more complex machine that he achieves his most remarkable success. His grim obsession with the moment of death leads him to master the workings of the human body itself. Leonardo da Vinci, now 53, has been working on the most recognized and celebrated masterpiece of all time, the Mona Lisa. He will keep working on it and keep it with him until the day he dies. His obsession with both artistic perfection and technical precision leads Da Vinci in a surprising direction. He turns his insatiable curiosity to the study of life's greatest work of art, the human body.
He was interested in anatomy from an early age, probably from his time in Verrocchio's workshop, where artists in Florence were encouraged either to perform dissections, autopsies at a medical school, for example, or they were encouraged, if not to perform them, then at least to observe them.
Always fascinated with the human body, he studies the mysteries of death at the hospitals of Santa Maria Novella.
Dicono che abbiate vissuto 100 anni. È vero?
100 anni? Non è così difficile. Non sento dolori, solo stanco, tanto stanco e terribilmente debole.
He's interested in the way that the pieces of the human body, which is, after all, a very intricate mechanism, the way the pieces of this mechanism fit together.
Within hours of the old man's death, Da Vinci descends into the cavernous morgue to dismantle nature's ultimate machine.
We might be surprised that Leonardo's dissection of human corpses wasn't frowned on by the church of his time. That seems, though, to be more of a modern concept and modern prescription.
Here he will make an astonishing discovery, centuries ahead of its time.
I conducted an autopsy in order to determine the cause of such a peaceful death, and found that it was caused by the failure of blood flowing into the artery that feeds the heart and other lower members, which I found withered and shrunk.
In 1507, Leonardo makes history's first description of arteriosclerosis by comparing the circulatory system of the elderly man with that of a child's.
And we have to try to imagine 500 years ago what it would have been like to work on an autopsy without the benefit of good lighting or good preservation of the material. The smell must have been awful.
Under challenging conditions, Leonardo invents an entirely new way of seeing. Later, his cross-sections and exploded diagrams will profoundly influence the modern method of visualizing anatomy and machinery. His code, like the man himself, becomes mature. Experimentation continues to be the primary engine in his effort to achieve what no one else could.
I am inspired by the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must act on it. Being willing is not enough. We must do.
His famous notebooks reveal the extreme scope of his visionary ideas. And yet he never publishes a page of them.
Often in his notes you'll see him talking about, I'm going to, do a book on this subject that will lay out this, and this. There was always, a little bit more you could do. There was one more observation you could make, and, time caught up with him.
As Leonardo ages, his legacy becomes a casual bundle of documents, a lifetime of genius written onto thousands of bits of fragile paper, including the only image we have of the man himself.
There is one image of an old man that's commonly attributed as being a self-portrait, but we don't know. It's completely untitled. It's just a sketch among, millions of other sketches that he did. And what I think is interesting is the extent to which that Leonardo is completely lost to us.
Toward the end of his life in 1517, King Francis I of France, a great admirer and collector of his work, invites Da Vinci and his two assistants, Salai and Francesco Melzi, to live on his royal chateau in Clos.
Leonardo got his last job, which is essentially being court genius to the King of France. He didn't really have much in the way of responsibilities. The King of France just wanted him as an ornament.
The king names Leonardo da Vinci favorite painter, engineer, and architect.
Si sta facendo tardi, maestro. Possiamo continuarlo nel mattino.
Francesco ed io lo aiuteremo a mettersi a letto.
But at 65, Leonardo's triumphs are behind him. A stroke has paralyzed his right arm, and his left hand can no longer paint fine details.
He doesn't seem to have had any obligations. Leonardo doesn't seem to have done much in those last few years, except for enjoy life. And he did enjoy life. It was the high part of a very well-deserved retirement, I suppose.
Salai, the boy taken on so many years ago, has stayed with Da Vinci, and Melzi has become his student and most trusted companion.
So Leonardo, at the time, he has with him the Mona Lisa, a couple of other paintings, all of which he bequeaths to Melzi, who is his apprentice and had been traveling with him for years and years.
In 1519, after months of failing health, Leonardo da Vinci passes into history.
I think Leonardo is one of these individuals who had a code of success. He didn't measure it in degrees of wealth. He didn't measure it in degrees of popularity. He measured it in how he felt about his own achievements.
To me, Leonardo da Vinci represents something about human beings themselves. He represents someone who overcame a number of social obstacles and really does show what we're capable of.
His ability to see so far beyond his present-day reality is, I think, one of the things that makes him eternally popular.
We have a body of writing. We have a trail of documents. With Leonardo, it's a complicated mosaic.
Painting was a source of knowledge. To Leonardo da Vinci, painting was a science.
He can inspire all of us today, regardless of who we are, to try to make the most of our lives as we can.
Da Vinci's genius catapulted him out of obscurity and into the courts of kings. By refusing to compromise his own intellectual code or be crushed by adversity, he becomes the most important man of his age. He becomes immortal.